We have called on the people of Gaza to move out of the areas from which Hamas terrorists are operating.
Israel has formally declared war after that unprecedented multi-pronged terror attack from Hamas.
On Saturday, October 7th, Palestinian militant group Hamas fired over 5,000 to 7,000 rockets in a span of nearly 20 minutes from the Gaza Strip towards Israel. Hamas militants broke open the highly secured border fence and entered Israel's towns in SUVs, bikes, and paragliders, shooting military installations and civilians. The armed wing of Hamas declared it has begun Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, named after the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, which Muslims consider the third holiest place after Mecca and Medina. The Iron Dome defense system of Israel, known as the world's most advanced defense system, also failed to destroy the missiles. Even in 2021, when Hamas fired 470 rockets in a day, the Iron Dome was able to destroy them, but the system failed this time as 5,000 missiles were launched at a time. The attack has been termed as the third deadliest terrorist attack of all time after ISIS massacres and the 9/11 attacks.
Israel is at war, but though Israel didn't start this war, Israel will finish it.
In response, on October 8th, Israel declared a state of war and launched Operation Iron Swords for striking Hamas targets in Gaza. The primary reason for the 75 years of ongoing crisis between Israel and Palestine lies in the fact that Israel was recognized as a state back in 1948, whereas Palestine till today has not been declared a separate country. In this video, we try to understand the history and geopolitical angle of the conflict. We will discuss the origins of the conflict, the major players involved, and the key issues that have prevented a resolution. Let us first understand the history of Palestine and Israel. After World War I, Palestine was under British rule from 1917 to 1948. The region was referred to as British Mandate for Palestine. Palestine at that time was home to 94% Arabs, majority being Muslims, and less than 3% were Jews. At that time, several anti-Jewish events were occurring around the world, particularly Europe, the most important being anti-Semitism, which was a form of hatred or discrimination directed against the Jews by the Christians.
Soviet forces made their way through Poland in January of 1945. SS officers began dismantling the Auschwitz concentration camp, where an estimated 1.1 million people had already been murdered.
The most horrific outcome of this was the Holocaust, which was the systematic extermination of 6 million Jews by the Nazi regime during World War II. All these factors led to the rise of Zionist movement in the late 19th century, which advocated establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine. The Zionist movement paved way for the Balfour Declaration in 1917 by the British government, which expressed support for the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine. This declaration is considered one of the root causes for the Israel-Palestine conflict. It paved the way for increased Jewish immigration to Palestine. By 1948, the population of Jews rose from 3% in 1917 to 32%. In response to this situation and the Zionist movement for creating a separate state for the Jews, the United Nations voted to partition Palestine into two states, number one Jewish and one Arab. The Gaza Strip, West Bank and East Jerusalem were given to the Arabs, and the rest of the British Palestine was given to Israel. In consideration of its religious significance, Jerusalem was to be administered by the United Nations. This decision was rejected by the Arab world, and it led to the outbreak of the first Israel-Palestine War in 1948. The war was fought between the Arabs of Palestine, supported by neighboring Arab countries of Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Lebanon and Syria, versus the Palestinian Jews. After the war, Israel dominated about 78% of mandatory Palestine, 22% more than the UN partition plan. This led to the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who became refugees. The Gaza Strip went under the control of Egypt, and West Bank was under the control of Jordan. This arrangement lasted till 1967. In 1967, the Third Arab-Israeli War was fought between Israel and a coalition of Arab states, primarily Egypt, Syria and Jordan. The war started when Egypt denied passage of Israeli ships through the Suez Canal. Israel again won the war and obtained the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, Sinai Peninsula and Gaza Strip from Egypt, and the Golan Heights from Syria. It was a stunning victory of Israel that doubled the amount of land under their control and also established its military supremacy over its Arab neighbors. 6 years later, on October 6, 1973, on the Jewish holy day of Yom Kippur, the Yom Kippur War, or the Fourth Arab-Israel War, was fought when Egypt and Syria launched an attack on Israel to recover their lost territory. Israel was supported by the United States and the Arabs by Russia. At the end of the war, Israel and Egypt made history by signing the Camp David Accords in 1979, which was the permanent peace agreement that led to Israel's full withdrawal from the Sinai Peninsula and to normalization of ties between the two countries. The Gaza Strip, however, remained under the control of Israel for the next 38 years. So that was the brief history of Palestine. Now that brings us to the question that if Palestine is not a country, then who governs Palestine? Since 1967, Fatah was the dominant political party in Palestine, headed by its leader Yasser Arafat.
Now, on this day 30 years ago, the Oslo Accords were signed between Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization. The agreements were seen as a major turning point in the conflict because it was the first time that Israel and the PLO formally recognized one another.
Fatah-led Palestine Liberation Organization signed the Oslo Accords in 1993 and officially renounced armed resistance. It also led to the creation of Palestine National Authority, which became the governing body of Palestine, and first elections were held in 1994. As per the Accords, Palestinians were granted limited control in Gaza and the West Bank. Hamas, a spin-off of Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood, was established in 1987. In December 1987, Palestinians living in West Bank and Gaza started the first Intifada against Israel. Hamas considers itself a political party whose aim is to liberate Palestinians from occupation and recover huge parts of Israel. However, because of its brutal means of war, numerous nations, including the US, UK, and Canada, have named Hamas a terrorist organization. Hamas officially entered Palestinian politics as a political party in 2005 when it engaged in local elections and won a landslide victory, beating Fatah. Since 2006, a civil war broke out in Palestine because of clashes between Fatah and Hamas, forcing Fatah out of the Gaza Strip to the West Bank. Currently, Hamas rules the Gaza Strip with no elections being held in Gaza after 2006, and Fatah, which has international recognition and backing, is seated in the West Bank. The two territories have grown into markedly different entities, with Fatah's PA enjoying international recognition and backing, while Gaza under Hamas, designated terrorist by the West, has grown increasingly isolated. Now let us understand the issues in Gaza. Since Hamas took control of the Gaza Strip in 2007, Israel has imposed a suffocating blockade on the strip backed by Egypt. They have built a massive fence along the entire border of Gaza. The other side of Gaza is the Mediterranean Sea, which serves as a natural blockade. The blockade restricts the import of goods, including electronic and computer equipment that could be used to make weapons and prevent most people from leaving the territory. More than 2 million Palestinians live in Gaza. The tiny, crowded coastal enclave has nearly 50% unemployment rate, and Gaza's living conditions, health systems, and infrastructure have all deteriorated under the blockade.
The policy of the blockade is ineffective. It's resulting in misery for the Palestinians who live here. They're living in a kind of open-air prison. They're still suffering this kind of collective punishment they've been suffering for.
Human rights activists referred Gaza Strip as an open-air prison. In December 2022, the United Nations Human Rights Council has reported that continued occupation as well as discrimination against Palestinians are the key causes of the recurrent instability in the region. Israel says the blockade is necessary to stop the flow of arms into the territory, but Palestinian aid groups say it is collective punishment resulting in dire economic and social conditions. So what is the role played by the Arab countries? The Arab countries have always supported Palestine because of their common religion, that is Islam. There is also a growing pan-Arab nationalism which promotes unity and solidarity of the Arab world. Many Arabs believe that Israel's nuclear program and military superiority is a threat to the Arab world. Many Arabs, Iranians, and Muslims view Palestine as victims of Israeli aggression. Israel, on the other hand, has been trying to decouple the Arab countries from the Palestinian cause, and the United States has played a major role in this. In September 2020, the United States mediated the Abraham Accords between the UAE, Bahrain, and Israel, promising to normalize ties between these Arab Gulf states and Israel. However, Saudi Arabia, the most powerful country in the Middle East and home to Islam's holiest site, has never recognized Israel and did not join the 2020 Abraham Accords. Peace talks has been ongoing between Israel and Saudi, mediated by US, but after this war, this has been put on ice. This deal is often referred to as the deal of the century because Saudi is the most powerful country in the Middle East and often referred to as Zionist enemy.
As the war escalates between Israel and Hamas, Saudi Arabia is putting US-backed plans to normalize ties with Israel on ice. According to reports, Saudi Arabia is rapidly rethinking its foreign policy in the wake of the war.
After the current Israeli attacks, Prince Mohammed said, Saudi Arabia continued to stand by the Palestinian people. The more blood Israel sheds in Gaza, the more difficult it will become to announce a peace agreement. So to conclude, the ongoing Israel-Palestinian conflict is a long-standing and deeply rooted conflict in the Middle East. The situation remains complex and fraught with tensions, and immediate international intervention is required to find a peaceful resolution.